Hey everyone, is it okay for Black academics to commit plagiarism? That's what, in effect, we're being told.
A baseless smear campaign against a distinguished black academic isn't just a personal attack. It's an attempt to shut down a black person who has a platform, and they keep doing this again and again.
I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and this case involves a guy named Jason Arday. He's a professor at Cambridge University. It's quite famous, the youngest Black professor ever at Cambridge. Obviously, a famous and exalted institution, the University of Newton and C.S. Lewis, among many others. Now, Arday is not famous for his work, but he's famous for who he is. He supposedly had autism that he overcame to achieve this incredible academic prominence by his own account. He's done all these movie-worthy things in his young life. We'll come back to some of those and the plausibility of them. But the immediate cause of this controversy is questions over whether he is copied in his own academic work. Now, these questions have been swirling around for a while, but came to a head when another academic, an infamous critic of DEI, wrote a long Substack post titled DEI Fraud and Cover-Up at Cambridge. So the Substack post, which is really quite good and quite extensive, and I recommend you read if you really want to do a deep dive on this case, raises big questions about Arday's dissertation. Seems to me, I'm not an expert, I have not reviewed these massive documents personally, but seems as though his dissertation copies long passages from someone else's dissertation without credit. But we don't need to go to the dissertation necessarily to conclude that Arday has a problem with copying, because this has come up in a couple journal articles he published. So one of these papers was published in 2018 in a journal called Social Sciences. Title, typically for his work, we'll come back to this, Understanding Mental Health, What are the Issues for Black and Ethnic Minority Students at University? And the publication, after concerns were raised, had to add this note. Arday's publication has been amended to increase the clarity of citation sources within the text. Previously, the statement that the research had been adapted from Memon et al. Appeared in Section 4, but inadvertently admitted overlap between the two publications in prior sections. The author has revised the text to address this, etc., etc. It notes that text corrections to clarify citation sources and revised text have been made in the following sections: the abstract, the introduction, Section 3, Materials and Methods, Section 4.1, Section 4.1.1, Section 4.2, Section 4.2.1, Section 4.2.2, Section 4.2.3, and on and on. And then it goes on to note all the citations that have been added, and you can see this long list here. So this paper, by the way, it didn't involve deep, original research. No, it was based on supposed interviews with 32 Black and minority students, and then basically quoting back what they said. But it appears that the quotes came from the other person's paper. So what's going on here? A publication called Retraction Watch describes what happened here. When he had to go back and change the paper, out of 31 quotes in the original manuscript, he trimmed or reworded 12 of them and cut 6 of them entirely. Some of the original quotes appear to have been patched together from subjects in Memon's paper. Arday numbered his participants from 1 to 32, but there are actually 2 number 13s. One of them he describes as a Black female undergraduate, and the other is a Black male undergraduate. The Black male undergraduate said this, according to Arday: let's face it, with the stroke of a pen, you could be sectioned or sent away for some counseling. But a similar quote, as Retraction Watch notes, appeared in the other paper: with the stroke of a pen to decide whether you're going to be sectioned or whether you're going to be sent away for some counseling. Then there's the other number 13, the Black female undergraduate. Arday has her saying, within African and West Indian communities, people do not trust psychiatrists in particular. But then there's the Memon paper, where someone says exactly the same thing. In the West Indian community, people do not trust psychiatrists particularly. More from Retraction Watch. In the corrected version of Arday's paper, the quote from female 13 has been trimmed of the overlap, while the quote from the male 13 has been cut entirely. None of this is described clearly in the correction notice. This is from the original Substack piece again, by the way. This was a statement in 2023 when Arday was hired by Cambridge from one of their vice chancellors. Jason Arday is an exceptional scholar of race, inequality, and education. He will contribute significantly to Cambridge's research in this area and to addressing the underrepresentation of people from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, especially those from Black, Asian, and other minority ethnic communities. We are making extensive efforts in this regard, including the expansion of the Get in Cambridge program, which provides financial support to address systemic disadvantages and the lack of social and educational capital, which often constrains the ability of minority ethnic students to continue with their education. A great deal remains to be done, and Jason's expertise will inform and enhance those ongoing endeavors. They were literally gushing over our day. Check out this clip that literally could be an outtake from Matt Walsh's documentary, Am I Racist?
The board of electors on your interview day were absolutely unanimous. We are so lucky to have you. You are the best in the world in terms of the research that you do.
And this is how Arde himself described his hiring. My work focuses primarily on how we can open doors to more people from disadvantaged backgrounds and truly democratize higher education. Hopefully being in a place like Cambridge will provide me with the leverage to lead that agenda nationally and globally. Now that doesn't sound very academic or scholarly, so his hiring avowedly was a political act. So the reaction to concerns about the quality of his work has also been political. Cambridge has totally circled the wagons around him, and Arde's reaction itself has been very telling. This is how he responded when another academic reached out to him about concerns about one of these papers, not in a particularly hostile way, as far as I can tell, but this is how Arde responded. Quote, instead of spending your time trying to dismantle racism and ableism, you've spent what I assume is hours combing through my work looking for mistakes. Anything further from you will be considered bullying and harassment. When a publication called Times Higher Education contacted Arde looking into these allegations a while ago, Arde hired a law firm to squash the story. So it shouldn't be surprising that someone whose academic work is devoted to finding racism everywhere considers questions about the quality and the originality of that work to be racist. Here he was at an academic conference earlier this year. You get the email and they say you conducted academic misconduct, and you think to yourself, well, this is incredible. I'm on the back foot here. How do I defend myself against this machine? The instruments that are designed to protect academic integrity, designed to protect our well-being and our intellectual property, are weaponized. He said that he and his fellow sociologists need to, quote, create their own playbook to combat the attacks on black scholars. Quote, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence of the good people. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Now, all this is piffle. This has nothing to do with race. He's either guilty of plagiarism or he's not. Plagiarism is not a racial issue. White people can plagiarize, black people can plagiarize, all sorts of people can plagiarize. The question is whether you did it or not. But the deeper problem here is that even if he was wholly original, this work is ridiculous and a waste of time. Check out some of these titles. Just a sampling of his work here: Understanding Race and Educational Leadership in Higher Education, Exploring the Black and Ethnic Minority Experience, Dismantling Power and Privilege Through Reflexivity, Negotiating Normative Whiteness, the Eurocentric Curriculum, and Racial Microaggressions Within the Academy, No One Can See Me Cry, Understanding the Mental Health Issues for Black and Minority Ethnic Staff in Higher Education. What do we know about Black and Minority Ethnic Participation in UK Higher Education? More to Prove and More to Lose, Race, Racism, and Precarious Employment in Higher Education. We'll See Things They'll Never See, Sociological Reflections on Race, Neurodiversity in Higher Education. Now, I'm not saying there can't be serious scholarship about race. Of course there can. Cornel West, Henry Louis Gates, Orlando Patterson, these are brilliant people, and they produce substantive work that, even if you agree with them or not, you have to take seriously and grapple with. But this is not on that level at all. It's not even close to it. It's not within 100 miles of it. The title of his PhD, An Analysis of the Concept, Reflective Practice, and an Investigation into the Development of Student Teachers' Reflective Practice Within the Context of Action Research. What? Here's a sentence from one of his academic papers. Ethnic minority service users experience overt discrimination and a lack of access to culturally appropriate services that are cognizant of the racialized plight of BME individuals. None of that means anything. It's just words doubling back on each other. He co-wrote a book on being neurodivergent. Here's a sentence from that. This is quoting from a lyric from Blur, by the way. For neurodivergent people who are often holding on to the coattails of neurotypicals, there's a need for the neuromajority population to be more accommodating and understanding in the process and hold on for tomorrow. The issue of neurodivergence brings up his biography, a huge part of the allure for Cambridge. Now, supposedly, according to his own account, on top of being this great academic, he is the most interesting man in the world. Supposedly completely mute until age 11, couldn't read or write until age 18. Now, Thomas Sowell, the great economist, wrote 30 years ago, a fascinating book on how late talkers can be extraordinarily talented. But he wasn't referring to talking this late, which I think would be almost unheard of. On top of this, he supposedly overcame a brain tumor that was removed just weeks before his PhD dissertation defense. He has supposedly, by his own account, raised massive amounts of money for charity and is a world-class amateur marathoner. He maintains that he ran 30 marathons in 35 days and 300 miles in 3 days. As the original Substack says, again, these are feats of dubious believability. Wikipedia lists running 50 marathons in 50 days as one of the highlights of a famous professional ultramarathon runner's career. 30 and 35 days is possible as an amateur, but only with intensive training and planning. 300 miles in 3 days is an even bigger stretch. For comparison, another ultra runner set a world record in 1984 when he ran 359 miles in 3 days. Arde says, no big deal. If you have the will will always supersede skill. Yeah, right. So all this, at the very least, is highly dubious and deserves a thorough investigation, which, if Cambridge were a serious institution, it would undertake willingly. It wouldn't have to be forced and shamed into it. But for Cambridge, the importance of Arde is not that he's a serious scholar. It's not whether his work is important in advancing the ball in terms of human understanding and anything anyone should care about. No, his importance is as a symbol and a political symbol. Now, there's a huge amount of condescension involved here that Arde himself should sense, and maybe he does, but if he does, he doesn't care. He is playing this game, and all indications point here to this story being another indication of a deep corruption in some of the most important institutions in Western culture. Hey, by the way, fascinating story. Comment, like, or subscribe. I promise you won't regret it. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.